Good to be back into game week. Had a good bye week. And I guess go backwards here to our Louisiana Tech just a little bit, and then get into the bye week in Boston College. But it was great to be able to sit back and have some time to really look at that game. A lot of things come out. I think the biggest thing is our guys have found ways to win differently in a lot of contests, dating back to last year. And so I'm proud of the guys for that. They're finding different ways. They're playing complementary football. It was really two different halves on the two sides of the ball. We struggled offensively to finish drives in the first half. In the second half, we finished our drives and scored a lot of points. Defensively, we were dominating in the first half. And really the only thing they did was when we had two penalties to extend drives. Outside of that, in the second half, we did not do a good job at times finishing in coverage, and we allowed their quarterback, who I thought really played a good game, to extend drives with his legs, with his scrambling. I thought our special teams were excellent all night. Our punt returners, our punt return team, did a nice job setting up there. He judged the ball well. He made some nice plays. We strained, made some smart blocks. There's plays where you could have had clips and things like that, and guys did a good job playing technique football and not putting us in a bad position. Played very smart. We had to handle a lot of weird kickoffs. They're determined not to kick it to Bam in that game. There was bloop kicks, there were squib kicks, and our guys managed those well. It was good to see Chris Dunn get back in a rhythm and knock two field goals through. As a team, we won the turnover margin, which is a big deal. Won the explosive play battle. Offensively, as one of our goals coming out of Clemson game going into La Tech was to have more explosive plays, and we had 15 plays that hit that category for us. Both our tailbacks ran really hard. I thought Ricky's run was a big momentum play. It was the best football play I've seen him have since he's been here. It was a great play by him. The offensive line continues to protect Devin, and he does a good job getting rid of the ball and finding ways to extend plays. Did not turn the football over offensively. We had another good end-of-half drive to get points, 38 seconds to go down and get a field goal going into half. I thought was a big drive for us momentum-wise. Negatives, like I said, we started slow. You like to see us score more points. And just didn't finish drives. We didn't sustain blocks. We got on the right people and didn't finish. And that obviously got corrected in the second half. Defensively, two takeaways and close to a third when Daniel had the strip on a sack. We did pressure the quarterback well. We need to do a better job of getting the quarterback to the ground. Continue to play great third down defense, and the designed runs that they had, we stoned the run very well. I thought our D-line, with the exception of one play where we got out of our gap at nose guard, I thought we played the run. We had really good gap integrity. We missed some tackles late in the game. We got fatigued. You could see that. And Jaquin's interception was a great play for him on his birthday. It was pretty awesome to finish the game like that. At corner, I felt like we can play better. I think those guys at times played too loose, can play, challenge the people in front of them a little bit more, play with better technique. And we had a really good week with that, with our bye week. With Boston College, they're a 4-1 team that they play really hard. They're very good statistical defense. When you watch them, they're fundamentally sound. Their kids up front play hard. They're strainers, they're really strong guys. You can see that they have good length at defensive end. They have a good rotation up front. Their linebackers are active. Number 19 makes a ton of tackles for them. I thought their corners played well against Clemson. They were very aggressive and didn't allow people to get behind them. And their safeties do a nice job disguising things, and they understand what they do on defense. They've made a lot of plays. They have 6 interceptions as a defense. A lot of one high coverage, a lot different than what we just played against. So, offensively, they're a physical unit. They're what you would think when you see BC, big tight ends, big offensive linemen, good rotation at tailback. I think what makes them different is Zay Flowers, the receiver. I have a lot of respect for Zay, recruited him in high school, think he's a really good athlete. Kid we offered here on both sides of the football. I thought he was a really talented guy. And this starts a tough stretch for us schedule-wise to have 4 out of the next 5 on the road and playing at night, getting home at 4 a.m. like we're going to on these night games. We're going to have to be really diligent with our time here, and be smart as players and coaches and make sure that we rest when we can rest and recover when we can recover. And we got to be at our best. When you go on the road, you've got to play, obviously, not only against the team you're playing, but sometimes against their fan base. And you've got to do a great job of being focused and executing. There's a lot of things that win football games on the road. Turnover margin is critical, and being great on special teams to set up our offense and defense. So bye week did come at a good time. I thought, we played 2 very physical, emotional games in a row, and guys were ready for a little break. After a hot fall camp here, it was very hot here in August and September, so we were able to get them off the field and get them some rest. But I also felt like we had 2 really good days of work where we could focus on our fundamentals and get a little bit of a head start on BC. With that, I'll open it up.
Jonas.
Coach, you just mentioned it, about we came at a good time. Through the first 5 games, 2 close wins, 2 blowout wins, and the Mississippi State game. Do you have a good gauge of the identity of this team? Did you go back and watch film from those first 5 games? You kind of have a good feel of where you guys are?
Yeah, well, I think we're a team that wants to get better. That's the biggest thing. That we're a very close group of guys here. They play hard for each other. There's a lot of passion on this team, not just for playing football, but for playing for your brothers. And that's evident. You can see the sideline hype, even the guys that aren't playing. Those guys are into the game. They're cheering on their teammates. They're talking to them on the sideline. So that's the one thing that does, stick out. I think, and I've talked about Mississippi State. We've learned a lot in that game. That game helped us, even though we lost. It helped us, I think, identify some things that we can't be, and the guys took that to heart. But we're, a team that is physical, team that plays hard, team that's not beating itself, and all those things put you in position to win a lot of games. And we just got to consistently improve in the areas that we're not doing things right. And that's one thing I do love about this group. The things that we emphasize, things that we see, they're really diligent about doing what we're asking them to do, and each week there's something new that, all of a sudden comes out, and we go to work on those new things. And that's kind of what I like about this group. They're not listening to outside stuff. They're really focused on how they can get better. And they know that this is a tough game coming up against a really good team.
James.
Yeah, Dave, when you looked at your offense during the bye week, were there any areas you felt like you could really work on, anything specifically?
Well, there's tendencies that you uncover when you study yourself like we did. And so the first thing is trying to erase some of that, James. It's just certain personnel groups are more run heavy or pass heavy, certain formations, so you want to try to make sure you're not giving things to the defense. Looking at all of our stances, looking at everything, and trying to make sure that we do our best to make it unpredictable for the other side of the ball. I think that's the first and foremost thing that we do. Sometimes, when you're in a 5-game prep or 5-day prep for an opponent, it's hard to fix that in 5 days, and to really uncover it. But when you get to sit down and study it differently, like you do in a bye week, it really helps you. From a player standpoint, every guy on our team was taxed the same thing. Find one thing in your game that you want to see disappear from film, just one thing. We don't need a guy to fix 25 things. If every player that plays, we take 80 on the road, if 60 of them are playing at some point and they all do one thing better, then we're a much better football team. And so that's kind of where we've been, James. There's not really a singular thing that stood out offensively, but there are little things throughout the roster that can improve.
David.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned the what's going to be a bunch of road games in the next few weeks, and I know they just announced that I think the Miami game is going to be at 7:30. Do these road trips become more difficult with all the night games?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they take a toll on your kids and your coaches for that matter. You get home at 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it ends up being. It's a lot. I wish there was a little bit more, I don't know, ability to play a 3:30 game every now and then. I'm not saying I'd like to play at noon, but this will be, for us, our 6th game, and 5 of them are at 7:30. So it's a little different.
Gibby.
Yeah, Dave, is there 1 or 2 players that you can identify that really benefited from the bye week health wise, and just how big was the bye week for those guys?
Well, I think our receivers, and our corners and safeties and nickels, like the skill guys that run the most yardage, they were sore. Their legs were, their feet, you name it. They've put a lot of volume out there on the field. And you talk about yards ran. And typically those guys on a hard workday practice, they'll run anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 yards, and that's not slow running. And they're running with pads on, so that accumulation over time allows us to back down, and get those guys some rest. Evan Carter, Thayer Thomas, Emeka, and so on. I think it's helpful with the running backs, and then on defense, like Isaiah Moore, Drake Thomas, guys that have played every snap on defense, basically, it's helpful. When you have players that are in a rotation, I don't think they get, the same type of wear and tear maybe that some of the guys do that play the entire game.
Brett.
Dave, I know there's always an emphasis on the here and now and one game at a time, but it's human nature, especially given the wide open nature of the ACC this year, to kind of look at the big picture. Do you have to talk to your players about not getting caught up in this next stretch on the road and what might be available as you move on, and to stay focused on now, or is it a given that they're already just locked in?
No, nothing's ever a given, Brett. Nothing. I mean, they're 18 to 22-year-old guys, like our society, walk around with the phone and see everything that's there, just like you guys do. So yeah, we have to talk about it. And one of our goals is to be the best 1-0 team that we can be. And that means we're really focused on the present, and so it does matter that 4 of the next 5 are on the road, but what matters more is we just take this week for what it is. Let's be the best we can be this week. We'll worry about next week, and just keep approaching it that way and keep trying to help the guys, communicate with them on what they need, where the focus needs to be for them. And that's one thing that, I met with the captains yesterday, good conversation, good understanding where the team is and how I can help them, from a recovery standpoint the most. And we're on the same page, and we just got to keep being that way.
Thanks, Dave. Good luck Saturday.
Thank you.
Rob.
Yes, Dave, generally when NC State plays Boston College, it's sort of the tail of the tape is inside. It's at the offensive line with the Eagles. Just your impressions of their offensive front, and what is it about them that makes them so well-versed at what they do?
Well, I think they've embraced kind of what they are up there. I think Coach Adazio did that. You see Coach Halfley doing that. They've got good linemen for one, and they're all old. I mean, they have one guy that's a sophomore, but the rest of them are graduates, or fifth-year players. So, they're 22 to 24-year-old guys. They're big. They've been in the college weight room eating college food for a long time. Their demeanor is they're going to run the football and play action pass. And, they're physical. They're good at what they do. They have big tight ends that are, quasi linemen, that go in there and do a nice job. They've had big backs. They're not as big in the backfield as they've been when they had Corey Dillon and some of those other guys, but, they're still 200-pound backs. And so I think more than anything, just like when I was at Wisconsin, I felt like at that university, we embraced what we were there. I feel like BC has done that. They don't try to run the spread offense, I mean, they're going to get in a phone booth and they still try to run by you. Don't get me wrong. They got some play actions where guys are running down the field and they do some good things with their misdirections and their jets and things like that. But, you're going to see some 12 personnel for most of the game and sometimes more than that. Sometimes they bring an extra offensive lineman in and a tight end jersey even. And so you got to be ready to play those types of things. As you know, I like that type of football too. So our guys embrace the challenge and look forward to the opportunity to play a very physical, disciplined Boston College team.
To follow up on that, sir, is there any situation you pretty much know what you're getting with them? Is it a situation where they seldom surprise you, but they're just so efficient at what they do?
It's the first time playing against Jeff and his group, so it's kind of hard for me to say that. I think with the previous staff, they were different every year based on what their quarterback was. They were always going to run power and counter and the pin pull and have all the different formations. I mean, but they sometimes Boston College, as you know, had a really athletic quarterback. Sometimes they had a drop back quarterback. And so they were different that way. I think the thing that impresses you with Jeff's teams, it doesn't matter. His quarterback got hurt. The other guy comes in and they're still putting up points. And that's good coaching, and they're doing a good job making the offense fit their QB and not turning the football over, not hurting their defense, doing the right things that way.
Thank you, sir.
Todd.
Yeah, Dave, during a bye week, do you guys give, as a coaching staff, give the guys that aren't playing a little extra special attention, possibly, maybe the freshman quarterback who won't be playing this year and some of the other guys, or do you just give everybody basically time off, or is that a time for those guys to get a little extra hands-on from the coaching staff?
Yeah, there's been some years, Todd, where we did a lot of that developmental type practice. This wasn't one of them. We've been doing that every Friday. We have our developmental Skelly and our developmental Indy with those guys every Friday. So we've been doing that for the last 7 weeks with them. Felt like this was more of a time. It's not just the physical toll, it's those freshmen, giving them a chance to leave town and go home and be with their families is just as valuable as 10 minutes of Indy right now for them. I mean, it's a long year. And I think just being with your family for a couple of days could help reset, and that was great for those guys to have that option, whether they took advantage of it or not, but they had the ability, when we left here on Thursday, to be home for the weekend. And I think that was good for them.
David.
Hey, Coach. So Emeka and Chris Dunn are both, nearing these big program records. Can you just talk a little bit about, what they both meant, this program over the last few years? Yeah,
well, I think that's tribute to their work ethic, their consistency. I think for Emeka, that's why he came back. He obviously wanted to get better, but he also wanted to leave a legacy behind. He's been chasing these guys in front of him for a while. And so, whether it happens this week or next week or whatever, I know those are meaningful things to him. With Chris, Chris has been Mr. Consistency for us in this program. You all know what we went through, for years before him at times after Nick Sadie, and Chris has been somebody that we can count on. I mean, he had a tough day versus Clemson, but outside of that, in his 4 years, he's been very, very, very consistent, very accountable into what he does. And so I'm really excited for them and any player, that has that type of career. I think that's says a lot about not just their ability, but their dependability to be able to do that over time.
Jonas.
Coach, obviously everybody knows about Ricky and Bam in the running back room, but it's two other guys in that room, and Delbert and DeMarcus, who, it's hard to get carries with Ricky and Bam in front of you, but they found a role for themselves on special teams. I think Delbert leads the special team snaps. DeMarcus is not too far behind them. Can you just kind of talk about two guys who come in and embrace that role, that kind of unsung hero role. It's not as glorified as being a running back. They attack it the same way.
Yeah, and I'd put Jordan Houston in that category too, Jonas. You know, he's starting on our kickoff team. He's out there on our punt return. He's on our kickoff return. So, you know, those kids have all bought into helping each other win. And they realize that there's two really good backs in there, you know. And so they're probably the biggest fans on the team of what happens when Bam and Ricky get the ball. And but they know that their way to help us win right now is through special teams and staying ready, you know, in case something happens in the backfield. But they all don't, it's not like they just bring effort. These guys are leaders now. They're guys people look up to on the team. And Coach Roper's really done a nice job developing that identity in the room that they're all going to contribute, whether it's seen or unseen. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's great for guys that are kind of behind the scenes that make things happen to get some notoriety there.
And as a follow-up, Coach Goebel said that DeMarcus and Delbert have everybody's respect because, like you said, the way they approach and the way they work. Did you see that kind of early on from those two when they first came to the program? They said they bonded right away over work ethic and just trying to get on the field. Did you kind of see that from those two right away? Yeah,
that definitely they get along well. You know, it's funny about Delbert. If you go back and watch his high school highlights, what'll stand out to you is his kickoff coverage. He was literally blowing people up on kickoffs. It was one of the things that I really liked about his film. I mean, there's a lot of good running backs on tape. When you find one that likes to break the wedge up all the time, that kind of sticks out, you know. It's a guy that can do some things on your team. And so that was one of the reasons we offered him was not just his ability to run the ball, but what he was doing without the football.
Brett.
You mentioned Boston College and quarterbacks a little while ago, and I'm wondering, has their offense changed at all? And if so, how since Dracovic went out?
Not much, you know, not much. I think, you know, there was maybe some designed runs that you'd see. I mean, they're still doing a little bit we call zone read avoid, you know, where they'll fake read the end and have a ball fake, read and ride with the tailback and a tight end blocking your outside linebacker where he can keep it. You still see that. But I know going back to last year, it seemed like the starter, you know, had more rushing attempts. Now, some of that may be just because they want to protect the guy now that they're down one for the year. But the rest of the offense is, I'd say 95% of it looks the same.
James.
Yeah, Dave, looking at your stats for the year, I was interested to see you guys haven't recovered a fumble, which is interesting for, you know, with a physical defense. When you watch the games back, I mean, is that something just you consider that a little unlucky? I mean, what would you kind of label that to? Because you seem to be forcing them.
Yeah, we've had a couple balls out that just haven't bounced to us. You know, Savion had one he could have got earlier in the year. The one Saturday, I don't think Daniel knew he stripped it. You know, he landed on the ground. The ball actually landed on top of him. I don't think he saw it there. And then their lineman recovered it that he beat. So sometimes the fumble thing is about, you know, getting a break with how the ball bounces. I do think as we get more and more sacks, you'll see more and more fumbles. That's part of the game. Probably where the offense is going to have the worst ball security is the quarterback that's thinking about throwing it when he's not running. You know, so getting to the quarterback a little bit more before the ball's thrown could help that stat. But I mean, overall, I think if you look at us, you know, we're ahead of where we were a year ago and the takeaway category. And so just like to keep trending, it's about getting 2 or more a game. That's our goal. And we're not there yet, but we are getting better than we've been.
Thanks.
Does anybody else have anything for Coach? All right.
All right.
Coach.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Annabelle.